Okay, so make sure you have the files for today. This is exercise 1, compound, and I'm inside Visual Studio Code, and I'm just going to preview this into a browser. I'm going to right click and open in browser. And you can see here that I have a bunch of hyperlinks, right? So there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And let's take a look at my document real quick. So I have a hyperlink that's inside of a p tag or a paragraph. I have a couple of hyperlinks that are inside of some list items, and those list items are inside of a list or an unordered list or UL. I have a hyperlink that's inside of this footer here. Okay. Now, if I wanted to style all of these hyperlinks, I could do something like this, where I say, color red. Right, I'm going to save, and I'm going to go and refresh, and they all turn red, right? Now let's hypothetically say that I didn't want all of my hyperlinks to turn red, just some of them, okay? Now what you could do, you might say, well, that's the point of like a class or an ID where, maybe I make a class called hyperlink. So I'm going to get rid of this one. And now the problem with this is that it's only really going to work if I apply it as a class. I'm going to go in here, hyperlink. And now in theory it should only affect this one because that's the only one with the class being applied to it. But there's another way to do this. Okay, so it doesn't involve using classes at all. And this is actually good because sometimes, to be honest, you can't use classes. There are going to be some programming situations where it's very difficult to use a class, or it may not be part of the system. So it's good to sort of understand a couple of other ways we can do this. So we have to go back and talk about what a compound is. Okay. So to understand a compound or a compound selector, let's go back and look at the document object model, or the way that this page has been laid out. Okay, so I have my body, right? And then inside of the body, if I was to draw it out, this is actually, there's an H1, there's a div, there's an H2, there's a UL, there's a footer, there's a P tag. So if I was going to draw this out, there's the body, there's the H1, there's the div, I think there's an H2, a UL. These are all direct children, there's a footer. And then I think there's just a P tag that's just kind of sitting at the end. And inside of that div is an H2, a P tag. And kind of go over here so I can kind of see both. So there's an H2, there's a P tag. Inside of that P tag is a hyperlink or an A tag. H2 doesn't have anything inside of it. Inside the UL, I know it's hard to read that, but it's supposed to be UL. There's a couple of list items. LIs, and each LI has a hyperlink inside of it. Inside of the footer is a hyperlink, and then inside of that paragraph is a hyperlink or an A tag. I apologize for this small window here. But the point here is that, if I say something like this, I'm going to say div A. Okay. So normally when we have a selector, if I had something like this, this would go through and select every div tag that's in my entire HTML document. A compound lets you add an additional aspect of the selector so that more than one thing has to be true to be selected. Okay. So I'm going to say this, div space A. So what this means is go find all divs and then go inside all of those divs and see if there's an A tag. Okay. I like to read it kind of backwards. I think it makes it a little easier to understand. Affect all A tags if and only if they are also in a div tag. Okay, so I'm going to say, let's now do color red. Okay, and I'm going to go back and notice I'm not using any classes, I'm not using any IDs, and if I go back, I'm still affecting this first hyperlink. Okay, now why am I not affecting, for instance, this one? Well, this is a hyperlink, but it's not in a div, it's in a footer. Why is it not affecting these? Well, these are hyperlinks, it's an A tag, but they're not inside of a div, they're inside of a UL, so it doesn't get affected. Both of these has to be true in order to work, or in order to select something. So for instance, let's say I wanted to affect this particular hyperlink that's inside of the footer. If I was to say footer space A, color, aqua, just for fun, and I refresh, okay, now it's turned aqua. Now, why was that the only one that's affected? Well, this has a hyperlink, but it's not inside of a footer tag, okay? This says, select all footer tags. In theory, there probably should only be one, and then go inside and select all hyperlinks, okay? Or like I said, read it backwards. So, select all A tags if and only if those A tags are also inside of a footer tag. Okay, and so this allows me to be very specific about what I affect. So, I want to affect the hyperlinks, but I don't necessarily always want to have to use classes because it can be a real pain to have to add them and subtract them from my HTML code. This is just a nice, clean, easy way. And to be honest, you can have as many compounds as you want. I've been using 2, but we could have 3, 4. So if I say this, what this says is go find all unordered lists, select all list items that are inside of unordered lists, and then select all hyperlinks that are inside of list items that are inside unordered lists. Or, like I said, read it backwards. Select all A tags if and only if the A tag is inside of an LI or a list item, if and only if that list item is also inside of a unordered list. So all 3 of these would have to be true. And luckily, for each one of these is inside. So if I save and I refresh, all 3 of those get affected. All right, so that's a compound. Okay, let's also talk about pseudo classes. We talked about pseudo classes before, but I do want to go over them. So I'm going to preview this as exercise 2. Let's preview this into a browser. And I have a bunch of hyperlinks here, right? And I'm going to style this, like, let's say I'm going to make them orange, okay? So all my hyperlinks are orange now. But what I want to do is I want to affect what is called the state. Okay, the state means it's the object is the same, but it's in different states. So think about a light switch. Okay, a light switch has 2 states, on and off. Or I have this, box here. The box can be open or it can be closed. Okay, it's still the same box. It's just there's an open state, there's a closed state. Some objects may have multiple states, more than just 2. So think about like a dimmer switch, right? It's like, it goes, or like a fan, there's like low, medium, high, extra cool, whatever. So it's like that fan can have multiple states, okay? If we look at this, we are affecting the hyperlink itself. This selects the hyperlink itself, or this selects the tag itself. What we're trying to do is not select the tag per se, although that's the first step. We're actually trying to select the state of that object. And that is referred to in CSS as a pseudo class. Okay. So the first one I'm going to do is I want to know whether or not my cursor is above a hyperlink. Okay, that lets me know whether I'm quote unquote like hovering above it or like about to select it. So the way we would do that is we're going to use the name of the tag, which in this case is the hyperlink, and then colon. Colon denotes a pseudo class or a state. Okay, states like hyperlink or like HTML tags already exist. You can't just make them up. So you have to know what they are. This is once again like a good reference, like a W3 schools would be really helpful. I'm just going to say hover. Okay. A hover means, anytime someone puts their cursor above a hyperlink, change the hover state. Okay. And I'm going to change it from orange to red. So what this means now is when I come into here and I put my cursor above a hyperlink, it will change colors, or it will change its, its visual style, its cascading style from whatever the default is to the hover state. Okay. There's actually many different states we can do for an A tag. There's something called the visited state. What this does is a visited state is if you click on a hyperlink and then you go to that link, let's say it's another page and you come back. The way the browser lets you know that you've clicked on a hyperlink is it changes color. Now, defaultly, it's the blue is the default of a hyperlink and purple is the visited state. But we can change that to whatever style we want. So I'm changing mine to be green. So if I click on a hyperlink and then come back, in theory, it should change to be green. So let's try that out. I'm going to click on this Google. You can see this is my hover effect. I'm going to click on it. And then let's go back. Maybe in this case, it's not going to work. Some browsers work a little better than others. Let's try this in Firefox. It may be that it's not caching things, but of course now I'm trying to show you something, it's not working. But it should work. Maybe if I did Safari it would work. Now it's just going to bug me. You can fast forward like a minute ahead if you don't want to see me struggle with this, but I want to make sure I'm not crazy. I don't know. Something happened there. I'm not sure. Say la vie. Last thing is there's something called an active style, which means so when you hover over something, it doesn't technically mean you've clicked on it. It just means you're hovering. The way to tell whether you've interacted with a hyperlink is there's something called active. What that means is it changes color really quickly. Good way to see this is if you went to like Wikipedia. Okay, I'm going to zoom in really quickly or really far. So in Wikipedia, the default color of your hyperlinks is blue. This is the hover effect. When I click on a hyperlink, for a split second, it's going to change color. Watch, see how it changes to gold there before it goes to the next page. Okay, that's that active color I was talking about. So let's change it to, I don't know, hot pink. All right, so I'm gonna, oh, there it goes. I think, yeah, now it does it. Maybe it took a second to register, but okay, now it's working. That's my visited color. Also, I'm gonna zoom in here, and when I click on this, it will change that active link, that pink, really quickly. That hot pink. All right. It's not just for hyperlinks, although that's probably where you're probably most going to apply it. You can actually apply a hover for anything. So for instance, let's say I wanted to do a hover for this. This is a button, right? Or an input. I could do an input hover. Input is the name of the form item, and then hover. Let's change the background color to orange, maybe. So that's that hover. You can also, if it's a form, see that blue line that goes around? That blue line actually represents what's called a focus. A focus is where your cursor currently is. So I'm going to get rid of that hover because I don't really like it. But there's a focus I could do. So what this means is when you click on a, I'm just going to make it like a light blue background. So what's going to happen is when I click on a form item, when it's selected, it's going to change its background color. But then when it's not selected anymore, it goes back. So it's only when it's quote unquote in focus. So let me refresh. So you can see there's that light blue, but as soon as, I can type something in, but you can see as soon as, I go to the next tab, it goes back to its default. Okay, so these are pseudo classes. So that is compounds and pseudo classes. Try that out real quick, and then we'll finish up by talking about displays again and multiple classes and how that's going to apply to navigation bars.